Now we'll start with our next session, Fireside Chat 2. The topic for same is elevating forensic audit efficacy in fraud detection. May I please have the slide for the same? For this session, I would like to call on stage our moderator, Mr. Srivats Kumar, external GC and corporate legal consultant. Please have a huge round of applause, everyone. Joining him on stage, we have our speakers, Mr. Satya Prakash Shaw, Chief Financial Officer at Mahindra MSTC Recycling Private Limited. We have Mr. Deepak Vigas, Global Head of Internal Audit and Risk Management at Cipla. Next, we have Abhay Dandwate. He is the Chief Risk Officer at National Bulk Handling Corporation Private Limited. And then joining them on stage, we have Mr. Vishal Gupta, Head of Internal Audit at FPL Technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, please have a huge round of applause for them. We can start with the session. Thank you.
Good morning all. I think you had already had two very good sessions in the morning where we could get a basic idea about what white collar crimes and frauds have been over the period. And as Bhavani mentioned in the initial panel, the concept of white collar crime was, coined by a guy called Edwin Sutherland, who held that, this is for those who the crime is done by educated and affluent people. So I think that is the most important aspect we have seen. And over the years, I think you all have been working in corporate for a long and seen a lot of issues that happen. And one of the important things I want to share is that I had a chance to look at a PwC's Global Economic Crime and Fraud Survey, though it's of the last 2 years. And the most important aspect which need to be kept in mind is that there's substantial increase in frauds on platforms. These platforms are social media, e-commerce, enterprise platform, and fintech platforms. And what is, I think I found it very difficult to understand, more so because of remote working and digital, we have this contactless payments, etc. The amount of fraud that has happened is that at least 26% of the organization that were asked to on a survey said they had lost more than 1 to 5 million US dollars in this entire platform related issues. So to keep that in mind, I think the most important activity we see is today every corporate has a lot of platforms for their business growth. Nobody's working on a, on a paper-based mechanism. So it's a lot of frauds that come, and I think we need organizations to understand that you are exposed to a malware, a ransomware. It could also be a money laundering or a phishing exercise. And we have seen everyday newspapers become, and even educated people get caught into it because of two aspects: a complacency to not to get into the details, and to be on the fear of social backlash. I think they don't want to be caught and say that I've done something wrong, I don't want to be ashamed. But they don't look back and say, let me contact the legal team, let me contact the risk team and take it forward. I think one of the important things we all need to take back from here is that if there is a challenge, we have to address it rather than run away from it. I think that would be the basic theme on which things can happen. And to understand these issues and to how to mitigate such risk and to have basic preventions in our system, I got very eminent panelists with us. I will just take 2 minutes to introduce them. Abhay is the Chief Risk Officer with National Bulk Handling Corporation. He has worked with RBL, Axis Bank, HDFC and Allahabad Bank. He has been spearheading the risk and compliance audit function of his company. He is designing and driving the risk matrix and policy of the company. Number 2, we have Satya Prakash. He is the Chief Financial Officer of Mahindra MSTC. It's a joint venture between Mahindra Group and a government company. So I think he will have a different flavor to speak on this. His past experience are with Imami and Peerless. He is a qualified CA, CS, CMA, and is an accomplished professional with experience in forensics, treasury and quality and internal audit. So I think he brings a lot of perspective and experience on the table to speak about that. Next we got Deepak Vigas, and he's the global head of internal audit at Cipla. And he's a very seasoned professional having experience of working in consulting of KPMG and EY. I think that will show his lot of experience coming in the tools that we use for risk management. Lastly, we got Vishal with us. Vishal heads the internal audit at FPL Technologies. He had earlier worked with Proviti, ICICI Bank and Indus Bank. He also had been a committee member of the internal audit of the Western region of ICAI. So I think with these experiences, I think I will start firstly into the most important question which I found. And Satya, I would like to start with you on this. What do you think are the major substantive technologies and procedures that you deploy in an organization to look at fraud detection?
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity and to start with me. Good morning, all the folks and attendees present here. At the outset, I would like to start with today is World International Yoga Day. And what a nice serendipity that today we are also doing yoga in this forum. We are also doing mental yoga, brainstorming yoga. And what else could be a better topic than white-collar crime and forensics? Now, sir, coming to the point, sir, I would always say that, see, accountants' knowledge are always put to test when there are aspects of fraud. And most importantly, when the fraud has been perpetrated with digital sophistication techniques. But when we speak of forensics, it is equally imperative to substantiate the occurrence of fraud, which through robust evidences which could be admissible and challenged and could be defensible in the court of law. Friends, I must say these three terms, court of law, is which makes forensics is different from the other investigations. Fundamentals remain the same for any sort of investigations. But in forensics investigations, there are certain precautions which one needs to take care. Otherwise, see, in my last 15 years of journey, I have personally handled 6 to 7 fraud investigations. Culprit was there, victim was there, evidences were there, but then also it was challenged because, and again, this digital privacy law, the general counsel, I mean the legal team, I will not say, I mean that way, the legal team asked me, the senior person, ki boss, everything is fine, but suppose if tomorrow victims, I mean, challenge you in the court of law, from where you get this data, how you can evidence, how you can substantiate. Now see, it's very astonishing that victims are there, culprits are there, evidences are there, but since you are violating the digital privacy law, so you can't do anything. So folks, I would like to say, for any investigations, the first criteria is data collection and gathering. Second one is examination, obviously. Third one is analysis, and fourth one is reporting. But in these 4 channels, when you are doing forensic audit, you must take care that evidences should be preserved. The originality of the data should be maintained. It should not be manipulated. So how to do investigation? If we are, I mean, using any data, obviously. So the second step is that you have to maintain a pristine forensic copy. You have to retain the originality so that if tomorrow is challenged in the court of law, you are having the original data. So that time and date stamps should not get altered, should not get modified. And it is better, you should always check the original evidences in read-only mode. So here you have to use some specialized tools and techniques which preserve the date and time stamps. Again, preservation is also it's an Achilles heel for any forensic accountant. I would say accountant only. Accountant means, the traits remain the same, be it statutory auditor or be it forensic auditor, the trait remains the same, mission makes the difference. Mission makes the differences. The quality of the external auditor, the quality of the forensic auditor, it remains almost the same with certain bit differences, but majority, fundamental remain the same. So preservation is also a kind of challenge. Your law says 8 years you have to preserve the data. But when you are doing forensics, you don't have liberty to do sampling. There is no origin, there is no ending. It's an elaborative exercise. So this 8 years is also act as a limitations. Again, when you come for data examination and analysis, you must maintain precautions in 5 logical areas. One is that the very foremost step, you have to make a list of custodian. And along with the process of investigation, it will be improvised upon. Custodian means the persons concerned, the machines concerned, which has to be interrogated by any means. Second comes legal hold. We all are having SOP policies, internal control policies, whistleblower policies. That's quite common. But how many company has got bring your own device policy? It could happen that some fraud has happened through their personal laptop, which is not there in the official IT physical assets form. So bring your own device policy should be there. Again, you have to maintain that originality should be maintained. Pristine copy should be there. You have to also ensure that the tools and techniques which you are using for forensics should also be licensed and certified one. It could not be some just open software. And everything should be compiled to legal hold. When you speak of legal hold means it's a formal legal notice to all the organizations, all the employee concerned that investigation is going on. Please don't delete any data, any software data or any physical data. That legal notice should be there in formal manner. Why I will say it has got some implications also. Third one is evidential integrity. As I said, that the originality should be maintained. So I will not repeat it again. Fourth one is, in the context to evidential integrity, evidential continuity in forensics. See, when you are having some data, it flows through many hands. And you never know when it passes through wrong hand or when it passes through right hand, and be it intentional or be it unintentional. What's the intention behind? The original data has got tampered with, And at the end of the day, when you are going to admissible in a court of law, you are having nothing. And the one is, it's a chain of custody, in fact. It's a chain of custody. So these are the things which you need to take precautions. And when there is a legal hold notice, now you have to check as a forensic means, you have to uncover the deleted data. And there are certain techniques, tools and techniques by which you can uncover the deleted data. Now, if there is legal hold, if there is a legal hold to all the employees that you can't delete the data without any till the further notice, and if any employee has deleted the data, then friend, I must say, it eases the work of forensic accountant. That exercise itself will be taken as a smoking gun. A smoking gun is a buzzing word in investigation. This smoking gun says, I mean, it's just like Latin terms, in flagrante delicto. It means that exercise itself is a conclusive evidence. You don't need to deep dive further. That smoking gun itself will make him a culprit and will be, I mean, liable for disciplinary proceedings accordingly. So these are the things. Bring your own devices. Again, now when data privacy law has come, so now forensic accountant has to work in sync with legal team also. Whether you are, I mean, unknowingly or knowingly, if you are harboring any personal data, I don't know whatsoever, so whether it could be defensible or whether it could be a breach in the law or not. So these are the 5 precautions which we need to ensure in substantive and analytical any forensics audit.
Thanks. I think Satya, I think you put a lot of perspective, the skills that is on the table.
Yes.
So I think you all would have seen our Bollywood movies. You always see the police landing up at the end after the crime is finished and over. So in today's fate, when you look at white collar crimes, I think criminals are 2 steps ahead of time. And with the changing technology that is happening, you are at a catch-up game. So my next question to Abhay is on this fact is that, you know, this white collar crime has been going in a space at which is happening. What are the biggest change you have observed in the Indian context, how things are happening within corporates? And number 2, do you think the legislative laws in place, the courts who give jurisdiction and some judgments on their path have been path-breaking? And with your experience, if you have seen in the international jurisdiction, you have come across some laws which are quite better than this?
So first of all, thank you very much. So as you stated that the white crime fraud has actually, the definition has changed a lot in the last 40-50 years. Earlier, the fraud was more of a bank kind of a fraud. If you look at typically the bank fraud used to be the higher inventory funding, also the higher the inventory value of the collateral security also, or discounting of the fictitious bills. All those kinds of frauds were quite common. But in last 30-40 years, the entire transformation has taken place in the white collar crimes segment. Now that includes variety of the frauds, including embezzlement, insider trading, cyber frauds, many other things. So the reason behind for all this kind of white frauds, we know that because of the insufficient, adequate regulatory mechanism is there, or in the sense that the greed for the earning money has also gone up significantly. Acceptance of the acceptance of certain crime which has been accepted in the social front also. So that has led to these kind of frauds. But if you look at it, the past trend and the recent trends of the white collar crimes, you will observe that the average age of the fraudster is now declining, because these frauds are become more of a technological oriented frauds are taking place on the cyber front, because we are more the technology has become the integral part of our life now. So the cyber fraud, e-commerce, this has become majorly quite prominent in this kind of in present era. So the situation for the forensic auditors has become extremely complex to deal with this kind of situations, because as a forensic auditors, you need to produce the evidences before the court of the law, because if you have to convict a person to sue to the legal fraternity, you need to provide the evidences. So in the present era where the entire transaction is taking place on the digital front, garnering that or producing the evidence is becoming extremely difficult, particularly in the data protection regime, particularly it becomes difficult. And this problem becomes much more complex, and it becomes exacerbated in case where there is a cross-border crime has taken place, because across the geographies, the legal system, the regulatory frameworks are different. If suppose a crime is committed in India and the person has fled to other countries, it becomes difficult to book the persons, because you need to know about the legal laws of that country, particularly in the countries like Europe and USA. The data protections, the personal data protections acts are quite stringent also, and the employees' laws are very stringent also. Sometimes it becomes difficult to transfer the data from that country. And secondly, the most important thing is that from that country you need to have signed, the country must have signed the extradition treaty to deport that person, to bring that person to India and to book in Indian context. Secondly, the crime, the quantum of crime or the punishment which has been assigned to the crime is also differed from country to country. Like in capital punishment, India may not be equivalent to that of in other USA, or in USA the financial crime systems are quite stringent. However, in Indian context, if we talk about the laws are concerned, I think sufficient laws have already been passed. If you look at it, the Indian penal law, penal code is there, Prevention of Corruption Act is there, PMLA clauses are extremely stringent to curb the money laundering. Some of the clauses are extremely stringent. Then Benami Transaction Act is also there. SEBI Act has also been, is quite stringent nowadays. And Company Act has also the extended provision of Corporate Act. Company Act has also become quite exhaustive, which is including the fraud, and which has been defined what is the fraud now. But to book the person, because the entire legal system, if you look at in India, is a very lengthy process. And it is up to the, if you look at the doctrine of the legal system in India, it is up to the prosecutions to prove that the person is guilty, other than accept certain statute laws like PMLA, where the accused has to prove his innocence. So in that situation, it becomes extremely difficult. And in particularly in the digital era, the extraction of the data, as Satya has already stated, that to preserve, have the accessibility of that data, preservation of the data, and also preservation of data and interpretation of that data is becoming extremely difficult, because many times the data is encrypted also. Then the most important, so in this kind of complex situation, the forensic auditors needs to know many things, which I would like to highlight here. First of all, that he needs to go in detail about. He should be well aware about the legal system, various laws of India or abroad. He should be well aware of it. Then secondly, whatever the investigation report he is preparing, that should be very clear and distinct, so that he can prove his charges, and which can be substantiated, and it can be explained to the legal, to the judiciary also, or the person, the investigation officers also, he can properly explain to them. Then the ethics and integrity part has also to be very much ensured, because forensic auditors faces many problems, because always you see in Indian context, you will find that the political parties or political leaders are involved in one or another scams. So there will be a lot of pressures will be there on the forensic auditors, so they should be able to withstand that. And also the communication has to be very distinct, so that distinct and clear, so that charges can be proved. And about, as far as the international law is concerned, he should be well aware of the, at least some of the laws which I remember about, that the United Nations Conventions on the Corruption, that is very, the signatory of those treaty has duty bound to share the informations about the enforcement, about the crime, about the exchange of informations. Like in FCA of USA is also very stringent about FCA, is very stringent about it. So that they should be aware of it, particularly in case of cross-border crimes concerned, because culturally also employees' rights are different, data protection laws are very stringent in that situations. But I think RBI has done a lot of good job nowadays. Regulators have, whether it's RBI or SEBI, has done an extremely good job. Now, if as far as my experience is concerned, I will tell you that in last 30 years, I have come across many frauds. And I've seen the frauds very close, with close proximity also. And I've seen, I've investigated the many matters. It becomes extremely Herculean task to provide the information to the investigation officer,
so
particularly.
I think, end of the day, I think what you say is that, evidence can be gathered, but I think we have other challenges in the Indian legal system in terms of the timeline the courts take to conclude
Yes.
a conviction process. I think that's one of the challenges. And as we progress today, I've seen laws are getting evolved. The Digital Data Protection Act that has come, the rules are still awaited. The amendments or the new act that has come to replace the IPC, CRPC and the Indian Evidence Act has brought in new provisions which look at the digital way, how we can bring those on recording the digital evidence. So I think as we go forward, I think we will see a lot of these improvements
definitely
happening and helping. But I think the most important thing is the time taken. I want to share that I used to work with a telecom company way back in 2002, and I was the nodal officer to provide the lawful interception request. It's a 2002 corruption case, and it came for conviction in the month of January, where I had to go and give my prosecution evidence. So after 22 years, you're going and giving an evidence for prosecution. You can see what the data is and what can happen. So I think that speed, and we see in jurisdictions abroad that less than 5 years is a maximum time. And when you look at white collar crimes, US and other jurisdictions have come in less than 3 years. They conclude the issues and go fast. I think that's, while we have special courts, but we still have a long way to go because of various factors we have.
So hopefully, probably, I think 3 new laws which are now been passed, I think that will speed up the inquiry process, because there is a time frame where the charge sheet has to be filed. But after charge sheet also, it becomes extreme. It takes a very long time to prosecute the person, because you have to produce the evidences, and then there is a delivery defense. So actually to convict the person, it takes a very longer time. But hopefully, I think because of the change in the laws, I think hopefully in the future the things will be
so on this
much
note,
faster.
I will now come to Vishal. I think Vishal, the most important thing which we have now come in the last 2 queries is the role of the digital evidence that will come. I think in your experiences, what are the tools an organization should use to gather digital evidence, and how do you keep pace, bring innovative things in place? So some experiences and some thoughts on that.
Sure. Good morning, guys. And first of all, this question was asked to internal auditor. Imagine this question might not be asked 10 years ago. The fraud is so integral part of our lives, day-to-day lives. Now, even auditors are expected to have some measures, build some tools, so that even their internal audit journey, they review the processes, considering the fraud, and if there any fraud trails are available, then they are expected to review and give the second hand to the forensic team, or in fact they're asked to sometimes review those forensic in detail. So yeah, tools, I would say there are many tools available in the market, but it's most important as an auditor to review the process deep, so that you can build your own tools. Tools are not restricted to any systems or any big jargon thing. You can build your own tools, basic using the SQL or Python. That's what we are trying to do. In our organization, we are trying to inbuild this in-house tools, ensuring the data transactions, data flow are secured. So yeah, that's how we should proceed with the.
So you have a challenge, I believe, given the way the things are happening, it's more on the cyberspace that is happening. So how much is the knowledge of cyber law, cyber security is required? I think this is an area in which I think all forensic and white collar people have to put time on. So what is the view on that?
A very good question. I think cyber security and data protection is very important, and the new law is coming up. Whenever the new person joins in our team, we invest so much time for that person to know the regulations. It could be any regulation, RBI, cyber security. RBI is coming with everyday new regulations. So that's how we are trying to evolve and understand the regulation first. Sometimes most of the organization people, they are not aware of the regulations. So that's how you have to invest time, ensure that they know the regulation. And once you know the regulation, each individual can put forward their thoughts, and based on that you can conclude how we should proceed.
Deepak, I will just extend that query to you. In your experience, you have spent more than 2 decades on the consulting side, and you have seen maybe the really big cases that come across. So the same query in terms of how do you see digital evidence gathering has been taken in the long run so far? How has been your experience so far on that front? What are the tools that a consulting firm takes which are different from what is done by an in-house corporate?
I think if you look at it from that front, from what we do is, I would say, I would classify it into 2 parts. One is if we know that this would land up in the courts in the future, the type of tools that we use is something which we use with consulting firms. That would be something I believe like relativity. And now with the new chat GPT on that, that's the one that we but that's really expensive. So even the base tool is good enough. It gives you every step of the way audit trails and evidence which could be used in the court of law. But if we don't expect it to go, because not everything will go to the court of law, and it depends on jurisdictions where you operate in. But on the other hand, where we do not expect it, we would use just normal tools which are being used by the consultants. But that's as far as the tools are
Cost
concerned.
is an important factor as a consulting side as well as the in-house side.
Cost may or may not be, depending on the impact that we perceive.
Okay.
And the aspect that we would see is, does it damage us or not? So that's, I think, an important aspect to go. Because I think all companies sitting here would be wanting to ensure that nothing comes back to hit them. So I think we shouldn't look at it from a cost perspective, more from a value perspective, is I would put it as. And just to add a little on the cyber front, I think we should get more knowledgeable in the areas of cyber, so that we are able to prevent more than I would say, do a analysis in the future.
Be preventive than reactive.
And what happens in the reactive, it's literally you don't get much. It's gone.
It's only damage control.
It's only damage control. And I don't think there is anything to do with, I'm not even talking ransomware now, I'm just talking about simple frauds that could happen. I think seeing our controls, seeing where the payment pockets, seeing the pockets of changes that take place in whether it be signatories, banks and all that, they are simple ones to actually put into place, so that, and simple ones in terms of controls like the mails that actually flow in, how do you ensure that they are screened out, what SOC do you have to ensure that nobody's playing games with you. All these, I think we need to be on top of it, so that we prevent it rather than cause a issue later.
Deepak, in your current role as the head of internal audit for CIPLA, where you have spread across jurisdictions, what is the biggest challenge you face on the forensic side and white collar crimes?
Some of the points were shared by my colleagues, so I'll just repeat some of them. I think one of the issues that we clearly face is the laws, international laws, if you ask me. So Europe would have it entirely differently. You would be amazed that in Africa also there will be some countries which have adopted French laws. So having said that, you can't even take the data out of the country without approaching the regulatory authority out there. So I think that's one of the challenge with the various laws, and they are really stringent in some countries. So as my colleagues did say on data privacy, I mean, I wouldn't even be able to take the data, even if it is on my official system, in spite of having a policy out there in place, which is clearly stated that anything lying on my systems is the data that I can access. I still need to approach the person. I still need to take his permission, and then is it how I can proceed ahead. So I think one of the ways we tackle that is being in touch with the local law firm in that area. You have a law firm here and there with our legal team. So that's one of the things, and you need to have the right consultants, local consultants. So we run it typically through the consultants that we approach here in India with their colleagues abroad doing the front facing and the back ending from India. So that's the comfort that we get on the legal side of the matter. When it comes to the matter related to gathering the evidence, post that comes the evidence gathering, which we would do it through the various imaging systems that we could do. Running the test would be their aspects, would be there. The third thing that we've seen in all of these is, I think now, over the last 20 years, as you said, it took you 22 years for the evidence to come up. I think from then till now also, the fraudsters have progressed a great bit. Yeah. So I think they are also more knowledgeable about all the means that we adopt. They know how to delete data which cannot be retrieved back also. It's possible not to retrieve back data. So they have mastered the art of getting the data deleted, would not be able to retrieve back. No matter which consultant tells you, sab kuch wapas aa jayega, but it will not. There are ways of doing that. So I think they've got more knowledgeable. So I think overall, if you see, I think fraudsters also are improving in their the manner of how they do it.
They're getting more professional.
They're getting more professional. I would say the other aspect which we would look at is one of the challenges that we face is also casualness on parts of, across the organization. Sometimes there's that casual approach. Somewhere down the line, all of us tend to believe ki we trust people, we believe in everyone. I think that little bit from the internal audit side, legal side, we have to always have that bit of, intuition ki what if something is going wrong? And that's the part. Because one side is people defrauding you. The other side which we see very common is people taking shortcuts. That's a dangerous part too. And that can be really dangerous because that will come and damage the image. See, the guy who's taken money from you is only damaging you only to that extent. But the guy who's taking shortcuts to do
He's
something,
skipping the controls.
he's skipping the controls and he's doing it really well. And typically they are management overrides. So if they are management overrides, it's really difficult it's not as easy to pick it up. And I believe many of my colleagues out here would have seen in international geographies, you typically have only that single guy who's, you need him. Without him, how will business run? So these are all those questions that, all the challenges that you face to ensure that, well, you need to have a reasonable level of control, but you also need to ensure that you keep checking them to see that nothing's going wrong.
Great. I think those are good thoughts. I think one of the most important things that we have always seen is that the white collar crimes and frauds are done by someone who is seated in the system. So he is one amongst us or who has taken steps to be part of you so that you don't identify him as someone outside the system. I think, so the most important thing which I would now like each of the panelists to share, what is the most important skill set you feel each one would like your team member to have? I think there can be different answer to that, to enable a white collar crime detection. So starting with you, why don't you start with Vishal from their perspective?
Sure, I think, so what I try to do whenever we are covering all the audit function areas, it could be all the activities, I try to emphasize each resources to build specific knowledge for at least one or two areas. It's very important because you cannot have all the, single person can have all the skills. So it's better to spread that all the resources have one or two skills for that specific activities. So that's how I try to build and
have specialists in your teams.
Yeah, and do not, sometimes we cannot have, every time outsider forensic auditors. So that's how you have to evolve. So that's why I try to do that.
Make a subject matter expert.
Within your team, yeah.
Great. Abhay, your take.
So before the forensic audit takes place, it is better that you put in place the preventive audit mechanism system in the company. So as far as my experience is concerned, I would say that because the industry from which I come is highly prone to or highly susceptible to the frauds, because we are dealing with the agriculture commodity which is movable in nature. So what do we do to control that? Because I am taking care of risk and compliances both. So we keep on changing our SOPs quite oftenly. And also we clearly convey those SOPs to all the employees also. The audit frequencies also increase based on the risk metric basis. Certain warehouses which are more prone to the risk, their audit frequency is reduced to the extent of 30 days or 15 days sometimes. Then our whistleblower system is extremely good. So we have tried to canvas that whistleblower policy through paintings on our warehouses there, that as and when somebody see that any any unethical practices are going on, whether it is done by the supplier or the employee or anybody else, he can convey to our CT Bajao or whistleblower or WBP policy system. Secondly, the tracking system, the deviation, the portfolio review system, which will give you the better information about it, that where there is a deviation which is lying in. Secondly, the defined policy for your discretionary authority should be well defined. It should not be an absolute authority. I think gone are those days when one individual used to have extreme absolute authority. Now everywhere there are checks and balances. Every delegation authority is very strictly defined, then your incident reporting should be very prompt. Immediately as and when somebody, so we have tried to inculcate in our employees that as and when somebody is not reporting and subsequently our auditor has reported that the particular incident has taken place, then that particular concerned person will be asked that why did not you report
Creating
it?
awareness, it's
Creating
your duty.
awareness. So that has become the one of the major factors through which we are trying to control it. And most of our, secondly, that after incident reporting, the investigation, the internal investigation, to all the forensic auditor who are the internal investigation report is very much paramount in the case of criminal laws. Because if you have done an internal investigation, tomorrow you can prove the company's innocence at least apex level or the management level, that the management is not involved. Otherwise, the vicarious liabilities will fall on you. So it will prove that your organization is transparent, which will save you from the vicarious liability tomorrow, which
Prosecution of
can
the
fall
management
on
of
the
the board.
board of directors or the senior officials. So these are the points which I would like to highlight. Thank you.
Deepak, your thoughts?
So multiple whistleblowing. I think the effectiveness of it is we see when over a period we have seen by the culture change is from 80% being anonymous to changing to almost the reverse becomes the it shows that that's how much they rely on the company, that they will take action. That's one. On the people front, I ensure that all our team members are aware of it. And whenever you do any area or whatever you take up, the aspect of fraud needs to come up. But above all, the understanding of the business and what happens on the ground is most important. Because typically I've seen you can sit behind on a laptop and do as many analytics as you want, and you will still never pick it up. It can easily be concealed.
You should know the business and pulse it very.
And I'll give you another example. We built a whole set of analytics for leakages that were happening. And that year we were really excited, and over a period we saw the leakages coming down based on the analytics that we had devised. But a year later, we realized that we were outdated. The people figured out what comes out in the analytics, so they had innovated further. So it needs a relook at every point of view. You cannot relax at any point of time. And third is using technology to your advantage helps. Now, to see multiple things using technology helps at the same time. So we've done one, it's on post basis. I'm trying to get it on the pre basis of approval. But machine learning techniques we are using so that we can identify and throw up the leakages or the aspects not linked to my procedures immediately. So I know who's doing wrong, when they are doing it, what they are doing it.
But right now it's comes to my thought.
Yeah.
You have this concept of ethical hacking.
Ethical
so you would like to look at something that white collar crimes, you look at ethical people, bring it to the system to at least look at that aspect?
That aspect we continuously do. So we have the aspect of red teaming with us, and we do purple teaming. Both is being done. There is no, we are on tenterhooks. We can't afford, because, but also to ensure that nothing goes wrong, we have segregated our OT and IT systems. So should something go wrong with IT, it stays separate from my OT, because manufacturing will not stop.
The firewall is very clear.
It's clear, it's segregated. So we're ensuring that we are doing that. I can't step down below that how it's done, because I'm not the tech guy, but we work very closely with IT. Incidentally, the person who handles cyber or the security for us is from our team. So he's a chartered accountant, by the way, but by sheer passion has built up cyber security skills which span the organization.
It go hand in hand with
so
white collar and frauds.
any aspect which happens in the company would come to us first as reference, not to IT, would come to us. So that's the way that we do that.
Your last word.
Yeah, thank you, sir. See, actually, I would say prevention and detection comes later on. Before that, there is something called deterrence. See, if your policies are there on place, be it any policies, and if you are awareing and making the employees conversant that somebody is watching it back at your back end. So 50% of the work is done by that deterrent. Deterrence is nothing but a kind of marketing hype that somebody is watching at you. If you will do it, you will get caught sooner or later. So by that way, I mean, this deterrence plays an important role. And so far as, see, when I'm at a part of the management, I'm as a CFO, although I'm a chartered accountant, but I'm not an external auditor and not a forensic auditor. So at I'm helm of the affairs, I play the role of devil's advocate. I keep ensuring the people should be aware of the knowledge. I play the role of, by arguing the propositions. Auditor will come later on. Forensic will happen later on. I used to apply the role of inverse logic and time and space dimensions. It's very easy to catch also. Sometimes it may happen, in a plethora of invoices, it could happen that a petrol-oriented car, anybody is charging diesel bills. So these are certain things, where system cannot catch, but you have to apply your inverse logic.
Or the sixth sense.
Or your sixth sense. And it's quite easy to catch, sir. Again, time and space dimensions. These are very common things. I think every forensic and every internal auditor must have come across these time and space dimensions. It cannot happen that your capacity is of 2,000 tons and you are producing 4,000 tons. It cannot happen. So by applying your time and space dimensions and by applying your inverse logic, and obviously, I must say, the first forensic specialist in the man's world, I will not go back to Mahabharata or Sakuni because they were something of God's era. In Kali Yuga, I would say Chanakya. Chanakya was the first forensic specialist, and he have mentioned 40 fraud-making exercise in his book Arthashastra. The first forensic specialist, the first economist of its kind. So, and again, I would say, as a forensic specialist, what he has said, at the back of mal-intention, there are some MP, MLA, some powers are involved. So, yes, boss, to be a successful forensic specialist, you should have a passion to play love over the edge. Because it's a risky and daring adventures. Yes, it's an interesting and exciting adventure, but yes, one should have a passion to lead over this. You should have a passion to love over the edge. Sir, I would conclude with this one, a couplet, I would say, in my mother tongue, pertaining to fraud only. हैसियत कम पर अरमान बहुत है, जिसे देखो परेशान बहुत है. सुना था एथिक्स से दुनिया जानेगी, पर यहाँ तो white collar के भी पहचान बहुत है.
Wow. So on this note, I thank my panelists and all of you. I think we had an interacting session about. It will be podcast and sent to all of you by the organizers. So I think, thank all of you. I think in the interest of time, we'll not go for Q&A, but during the break, happy to take any calls, and I think all the panelists will be around, so you can take it forward from there. Thanks on all for hearing us out and for the thoughts of the panelists. Thank you, everyone.